All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to join us today. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, based on where you're from, where you're attending the session from. So, today we're talking about the 47-day certificate lifespan mandate that has just become official in the last few weeks. As you might know, the certificate lifespan is going to drastically come down from 398 days to about 47 days very shortly. Although the change is going to fully come into effect by 2029, the whole process is going to happen in a phased manner. So changes start as early as March 15, 2026, which is about less than 10 months from now. So today we are going to talk about the whole change, why this has come into the picture, and what the implications are, and how customers can actually deal with this particular change, and how Manage Engine can kind of help customers navigate this change as well. So that is going to be the key agenda for today. So I would just get started with a brief overview of the whole certificate life cycle that is varied over the last 10 to 15 years, right? And if I were to bring up the background, I would probably also have to touch upon two key entities that kind of form the foundation layer of your digital world, your online world. These two entities will be your certificate authority and the browsers, which act as the foundational trust layer of your digital online world. And I say so because these two have very distinct roles. And I want to brief about that now because this is very important that I set the context before I even explain why we are seeing a lot of changes with respect to certificate validities. The reason being, the certificate authority is an entity that is responsible for validating the legitimacy of an organization. And after validating the legitimacy, it's their job to attest that this particular entity or organization or even an individual is the owner of the public key in the certificate that's sent to the certificate authority, and also that this particular organization or individual controls the corresponding private key and the fully qualified domain name as that's part of the certificate that's sent to the certificate authority. And by doing so, the certificate authority is able to verify the legitimacy of this particular organization and also issue a digital certificate, which acts as a cryptographic credential for that particular organization. And for example, if I were to give you an example, consider a domain such as Zilka.com or an organization that is Zilka Corporation. If Zilka Corporation were to reach out to a certificate authority and get a certificate from the certificate authority, they would they would ideally have to ensure that the Zilka Corp is the controlling authority of the domain name Zilka.com, and also that they are the controlling entity of the private and public keys that they use to request for a new certificate from any certificate authority. And the other entity in this particular digital trust layer would be your browsers, and their role is to verify this particular attestation and then transmit or rather indicate this particular verification that is being done by the browsers to the end users. So they'll have to give them visual cues and also ensure that they're kind of informing the users about the trustworthiness of this particular domain, right? So at a very high level, these are the two important roles that these particular entities play. And the reason why I bring that up is because in this particular slide, you can see that a certificate authority has to validate that the organization holds the private key at all times and is also the owner of the fully qualified domain name, right? So these are not static entities. In this particular instance, we're talking about private keys and as well as your domain names, which are entities that can actually be transactional and may not stay with one particular organization forever. For example, your domain name can no longer be valid and it can probably either expire or you probably sell the domain name to another individual, or you could also have certain incidents that lead to the compromise of your private key. In such cases, the verifying entities, which are your certificate authorities and browsers, will have to ensure that they're not falsely validating or they're not issuing certificates that might mislead users into trusting insecure websites or insecure organizations as legitimate ones, right? And in what scenarios can such a case happen? When you issue certificates with very long validity periods. And that was the case before 2012, right? When certificates were valid for about 8 to 10 years. And then the certificate authorities and the browsers, they come together, they kind of form a forum, the CA browser forum that comes into the picture. And that is when they decide that, you know what, we've got a huge responsibility here. We have to ensure that we're not misleading users into believing that a particular organization continues to be who they claim to be, right? So that is why the certificate validity started coming down to about 5 years in 2012, then down to 3.25 years by April 2015, and eventually to 2.25 years and 13 months, which is the current maximum validity period for which you can get a public certificate, public SSL certificate, right? So as of date, if you were to reach out to a certificate authority and request for a new public SSL certificate, you would the maximum validity that you can expect to get is about 398 days. But then you could ask, is this probably the ideal number of days? That was probably what Google and other forums and other entities in the browser space asked. So in the year of 2023, around March 2023, Google proposed a move. They called the whole proposal "Moving Forward Together." They released a proposal named "Moving Forward Together" in the year of 2023, and they started conversations around shorter lifespans for certificates. So they wanted to bring down the certificate validity to about 90 days. And Apple, again, in the year of 2025, early this year, around January, they actually did Google one better, and they were like, you know what, I am going to make a proposal. Why not bring down the certificate validity to 45 days instead of 90 days? So Google initially wanted to immediately bring down the validity to 90 days, but then Apple's proposal wanted to bring down the validity from about 398 days to 200 days by this year, by 2025, and then to 100 days by 2026, and to 45 days by 2027. This created a lot of conversations in the CA browser forum. It's a forum presided by a lot of popular CA and browser entities, the ones that form the important core of this particular forum. After several talks and conversations, the CA of Browser Forum, which is the deciding authority, made this change official with a few tweaks. Right? They did get votes from all of the entities involved, and they unanimously were able to get a resounding yes in favor of this whole mandate going live. I think about 28 of the vendors involved voted in favor, and about 2 to 3 had to abstain or whatever, right? So, more or less, around April 11, 2025, this particular change came live. So, that is where we are. And there were a few changes I mentioned, right? Apple's initial proposal was to bring it down to 45 days, but then the final proposal had a bit of a change. And that is what you're looking at on your screen. So, but as of date, as I earlier mentioned, certificate validity would be about 398 days, which is a year and another month, which is a 10% of a year and a 10% round off or a buffer period. So, for example, if you were to procure a certificate on the first week of January and you had to take an extended vacation this time around, you would probably end up with an expired certificate notification when you log back in, right? So they initially did not want this particular issue to pop up for admins, and that's why you usually have a 1 year period and about a 10% round off or buffer period. Same goes for the 200-day validity, which will start from March 15, 2026. So that's about 6 months and another 10%, which is about 198 days, rounded off to 200 days. Similarly, the certificate validity would come down to 100 days by 2027. And by 2029, after a year of no change, which would be 2028, after that particular cool off period, if you may, by March 15, 2029, your certificate lifespan will come down to just about 47 days. And it's not just your certificate lifespan that's coming down. Another important factor to be aware of is the DCV reuse period that is also coming down drastically. And the real importance of this particular change is because if you were to get a new certificate from a certificate authority, and let's say you request for a certificate and they ask for you to do domain control validation, and you do it perfectly. So for the next 398 days, you would not have to validate that you control access to this particular domain again. But starting 2026, you will have to revalidate, or you would probably have to do domain control validation after 200 days. And then from 2027, after 100 days, and from 2029, March 15 of 2029, March 15th, you would have to do DCV every 10 days, right? So if you were to procure a certificate on March 15, 2029, and do domain control validation on the same day, you would only be able to get new certificates without domain control validation for another 10 days. So you will also have to keep this in mind. Not a lot of changes happen with respect to organization validation or your extended validation. And the reason being, organizations don't quite go through a lot of changes every other week or month. That's why you see the change happening from 825 days to about 366 days starting March 2026. But that's about it for now, right? Like until 2029, your OV or EV reuse period continues to be 366 days. And the reason why this is of importance to everyone, every individual who's reliant on a public certificate is because until now, and well up to March 2026, early March 2026, any certificate that you procure, you would probably have to renew them a maximum of once every year. But starting March 15, 2026, the certificate validity would drastically come down to about 200 days. So you're looking at least two renewals per year, right? And the same goes when March 15 of 2027 happens. That'll be about four minimum renewals every year because the validity comes down to about 100 days. And for March 2029, you're looking at least eight renewals per year. For certificates issued from March 15, 2029, you're looking at a minimum number of renewals of eight per year. And this is just the minimum number if you were to have a cadence period as well. For example, if you wanted to renew your certificate well in advance before the expiry, you would probably have to renew these certificates up to 12 times starting March 15, 2029. You would probably have to look at 12, 8 to 12 expiring, 8 to 12 certificate renewals starting March 15, 2029 every year. And that is basically the significance of this change. And not only would you have to renew your certificates, you would also have to do your domain control validation every 10 days starting March 15, 2029. So before we proceed to look at why this change has even come into picture, I know we did talk about that a little bit earlier, but the main certificates that are affected by this change would be your public SSL server certificates, right? This does not affect your private or internal certificates as of now. All that changes is basically the validity for your public server certificates, right? Anything and everything in the web PKI that you manage, that is what will go through this particular change. And the reason why, just to touch upon a few points that we spoke about earlier, the reason why this change is happening is because the CA browser forums kind of agree that it's time to bring down the certificate validity to about 45, 47 days, just to ensure that any exposure that's happened it's actually minimized. Like the exposure period is minimized. Should my certificate or should my private key actually get exposed due to say some sort of a vulnerability that results in an attack, or should there be human error and some misplacement or some tampering happens, and I have no control over the private key as an organization, you should have faster remediations in place, right? And that is basically what the change is aiming towards: faster remediation and rectification. And all of this also points towards automation, right? Even in Google's proposal that went live in 2023, they had spoken extensively about enterprises adopting automation practices, because as in, as these changes happen, it is only feasible for organizations to automate these particular actions. These are repetitive actions are that could be quite costly if not paid attention to. So this is exactly why the CA Browser Forum is also recommending that companies and organizations start automating certificate management. And when organizations start automating their certificate management, it also offers another important benefit in the long run, which is being ready to transition to a crypto agile environment. I think a lot of us here today are aware of the threats posed by quantum computers. Um, if you're reading a lot about this topic, you would know that a lot of the algorithms that we use as of date, the encryption algorithms like your RSA and ECC, are potentially susceptible to attacks from advanced quantum threats that are looming around the corner. So if you adopt automation today, that will be an easier transition for you should you have to swap out all the algorithms that you currently manage today. And that will kind of power you to migrate or move towards a crypto agile environment. And yeah, as always, you kind of get operational overheads. You kind of get lesser operational overheads as well when you automate things. It'll be easier for your administrators to manage a lot of these tasks. Also, another important reason, if you weren't already convinced that automation is the way ahead, this is probably not going to be the last update, right? Because we've seen historically every 2 to 3 years, we're seeing some drastic reduction in the certificate lifespan. Right now, you will be facing reduction all the way up to 47 days by 2029. There's not going to be any other change until 2029. But post 2029, you might have to prepare for shorter certificate validities as well. And I say that because already certificate authorities issue short-lived certificates. For example, Let's Encrypt already has launched certificates with 6-day validities as well. So might as well be might as well adopt automation right now when there's a lot of time, and you have a lot of you have a lot of time to contemplate and also to adopt automation so that you're safer when the time comes where you would probably have to look at 5 6x more renewals, right? All that said, how do you transition? And this is a question that's commonly posed to us by our customers and people we meet online and offline, people who reach out to us, talk to us about this particular change. The one question that we kind of get is, you know what, a lot of times we don't automate actions not because we don't want to, it's just because we don't have the right mechanisms in place, because we use appliances that don't support automation. For example, if I can give you an example, that should be some of the older network switches or legacy systems. Say, for example, like older versions of your HV Aruba or your Cisco Catalyst and so on. In some cases, these appliances or platforms and devices might not support automation protocol. And we agree, we understand. It, the ideal world is 100% automation, but that isn't the case as of now, right? So in that case, we acknowledge that this is an issue, that you might not be able to automate every single certificate that you manage, the life cycle of every certificate that you manage. But what you can do is you can set policies starting today, starting now, defining policies and action plans that will help you ensure that you're paying attention to the ones that don't support automation, and that you're able to automate wherever possible, so that that kind of eases up your burden as administrators or as IT managers or IT directors, and you're able to just focus on the most important tasks at hand, right? If automation is possible and automation solutions are already in place, or if you're looking towards automation solutions, then absolutely automate where possible. But if you identify and if you're able to just come up with a list of appliances or platforms that don't support automation, then maybe now is a good time for you to start by defining policies would start with defining who the stakeholder for this project is, right? And which teams would probably be involved. You would probably need complete visibility of every single certificate that is part of your network or is part of your enterprise. You would probably want to inventory all of this and then make the distinction, then make the call. Do I really feel that I can automate this particular workflow? Or do my appliances actually support automation? If yes, can I start with automation? And if not, can I start with monitoring and alerts for the certificates that will need manual renewals, right? And by doing all of this and also ensuring that you're integrating these workflows as part of your existing and upcoming workflows, you will be able to ensure you're navigating this change in a very efficient manner. So what can you do? You can start right away. That is my number one tip. I know it's a no-brainer tip, but again, you have about 9 to 10 months starting now until March 15, 2026. So right now we're in the month of May, and we have about, yeah, that's about 10 months, right? Just about less than 10 months, but you have enough time to start from scratch. Even if you aren't using automation, if you aren't having a lot of automation controls in place as of this moment, I strongly recommend that you start with the action plan. Who is responsible for this change? And after you have the stakeholders set up, come up with something of the sort of an action plan that will then help you ask these important questions, such as oh, okay. You know what? I found a bunch of certificates that probably can't be renewed because of inherent issues with the appliance and the platform that I use. These are legacy systems. These have not had a firmware upgrade in the last 10, 15 years. What do I do? Okay, do I still continue to use a public certificate for this use case? Or can I actually move to, can I actually move this use case to my private CA? Can I actually eliminate the dependency of a public certificate in this particular case? Because most often you can do one of two things, which would be one, identifying if a public SSL certificate is definitely required for the use case, because this change only affects public SSL server certificates for now. So if you are unnecessarily using a public certificate for an internal use case, now might be a great time to start the migration to your internal system, your internal certificate, internal CA like workflows. Or if you can already renew these certificates, then where do I start? What are my high priority tasks? What are my high priority use cases to target? These are again important questions for you to ask. And do you have alerts and monitoring set up on systems or on alerts and monitoring set up for certificates that don't support automated renewals? And on top of all of this, what do you do with legacy systems, with post-quantum cryptography, the way ahead, being the way ahead, right? Do you actually start having plans for migration? Do you kind of initiate conversations now about your legacy systems? Or do you at least initiate conversations with your vendors, right? These are important questions to ask. And you can ask all of them right now, because now is when you have the time to ask, iterate, and also educate people and all stakeholders involved in this particular project. All right. So this is something of an action plan that we've built for you. Um, Again, every enterprise might be different. Your use cases might completely vary based on the internal policies, your practices, and so on. But this is something that you can use as a reference plan, right? How can you actually be prepared before the first step of this particular change even rolls out? That is what you're seeing on your screen right now. So you would see two important points that you'll have to address by December 2025. That'll be your first 2 points. And the rest 2 points are actions that can be done in tandem, right? And I'll explain just about that right away. So what we would want you to do is in the next 4 months, right? That should be about by the end of September, you should be ready with not just a proper inventory of all the certificates that you manage, but also with a priority matrix of all the certificates that will be affected by this change. And I say so because it will be very crucial for you to start with the high priority ones right away so that you aren't aren't lacking time in the future. You aren't testing these particular critical use cases at a later stage. Start now, inventory all your certificates, and if possible, try to bring your public and your private CA certificates into one single platform, because if you manage multiple platforms for different use cases, chances are you might miss out on the type of certificates that you're using for a particular use case. You could miss out on a renewal, or you could have struggles with implementing the policies that you would want to implement across your organization, right? So start with discovering your certificates, discovering all of them, and if possible, bringing them all into one single platform, and then doing a quick audit of the certificates that will be affected, right? Once you have a list of all the certificates that would be affected by this change, come up with a priority matrix. What are the certificates that can be renewed easily, that can be automated easily, but are also important, of high importance, that will take the highest precedence, right? Next, what are the certificates that would most likely have to be manually renewed because of platform and appliance dependencies, or legacy dependencies? What are those certificates that I'll have to be mindful of at all points? And these are also of high criticality. Those will also take high precedence. These certificates may not be automatically renewed. They may not be supporting automated renewals. But what is important is setting alerts and monitoring, ensuring you have complete visibility, and ensuring you have the right notification mechanism set, because it will be very crucial when the time comes. Next, what are some certificates that can be automatically renewed but are probably of medium to low priority? That can take the next priority. And anything that can be renewed and is probably not of high priority, or any certificates that can be moved to internal, that can be moved from public certificates to private certificates, that can be considered as well with medium priority, right? So these are the two actions that you should definitely finish, or should definitely implement by Q3, which should be September. By Q4, starting from October, you should be able to initiate conversations with your vendors. Should you find out a list of appliances that probably don't already support automation, you can start conversations with your vendors to try to identify if that is the case even now. In most cases, Acme protocol support would probably have been released in one of those updates that you may or may not have been aware of. So now is a good time for you to get in touch with these vendors, try to see if um, any new update has happened. If so, you can just go ahead and update your priority matrix accordingly. And if you still find that automation is not yet available, you can then notify your vendors that it is of critical importance for you as well, so that they can bump it up their roadmap items. Or you could also start conversations with other vendors who support such protocols, so that you are in a better place in the future, so you can procure from different vendors who support your goals in the future, right? And as you're doing that, you should also be simultaneously testing and deploying automation for certificates that support automation, that can be automated and are of critical priority. So all of this should be done by the end of 2025, by December 2025. That is when you will be in, that is when you offer yourself a good, comfortable 3-month period when you can audit this whole setup, see if you have everything in place, see if there are any breakages or if you have any findings. If you do find any issues, you can address them, educate your internal teams so that they're ready and they're prepared. They should be aware of the fact that this is not a one-time change. This is going to be a yearly change, except for 2028, right? So changes will happen by 2027 as well. So you should educate and train your stakeholders accordingly. And once you're set, you can be ready for the rollout that will happen starting March 15, 2026. Perfect. So how can Manage Engine help? Because that is an important part of this session, and that is that is basically where I want to bring Arul into the session as well. So what I want to do is just give you a quick overview of all the different things that we can do with a solution like Key Manager Plus. These are primarily available in Key Manager Plus, but if you're a customer of PAM 360 or if you're evaluating PAM 360 at the moment, these are also certain capabilities that PAM 360 also includes or would eventually include if it doesn't already have it. So for the sake of the demo today, we're going with Key Manager Plus, and we're going to showcase all the different automation capabilities of Key Manager Plus, starting from discovery and inventory, renewal of certificates, vulnerability scanning, alerting and monitoring, all done in an automated fashion. Arul will be showcasing all of these capabilities. And also the private CA and the public CA management that Key Manager Plus offers. So with Key Manager Plus, you can use it as a single platform to manage both your private CA certificates as well as your public certificates. And on top of this, the different integrations that you can use to plug with your existing setups and the customizable Acme and REST APIs that you can leverage on top of the audits. So I'll just hand over the session to Arul, who's our senior product consultant from Manage Engine Key Manager Plus. So all yours, Arul.
Thank you, Meenakshi. Hello, everyone. So let's quickly dive in to a quick demo of Key Manager Plus, where I can showcase the capabilities that will help you during this transition period, as well as we can take a look at the current automations supported by Key Manager Plus, and finally, we can also look at the roadmap that we are currently working on towards automation. Okay. So first of all, to give you a quick overview of what Key Manager Plus does. So Key Manager Plus allows you to manage any certificate that complies to the X509 standard. So with that said, you can use Key Manager Plus as a centralized repository for all SSL certificates, meaning that you can discover, import, create the inventory, configure notification alerts, get notified on certificate expirations. And when it comes to certificate management in Key Manager Plus, you can categorize them into two types, right? Internal certificates and external certificates. So if you take internal certificates, you can further categorize them into Microsoft Certificate Authority or Active Directory Certificate Services signed, self-signed, private CA signed, custom root CA signed. And when it comes to external certificate authorities, you can further categorize them into commercial CAs like DigiCert, Global Sign, Entrust, Sectigo, GoDaddy, etc., as well as the Acme vendors who provide certificates for free that is already valid for like 90 days, like Let's Encrypt, Bypassco SSL, and Zero SSL. So the first step when it comes to managing SSL certificates using Key Manager Plus is to discover the existing certificates and create the inventory. And to ensure the authenticity of the discovery, we propose two types of discoveries in a specific order. So the first type is to discover the certificate directly from the certificate authority using the integrations supported by Key Manager Plus. And the second type is to discover the certificates directly from the endpoints where the certificates are being consumed, okay, based on the different types of discovery scans supported by Key Manager Plus. So if you take a look at the first type of discovery in creating the inventory, and if you go to integrations tab in Key Manager Plus, as you see, we have categorized the CA integrations as public and Acme vendors. And if you take a look at the public CAs or commercial CAs like DigiCert, Global Sign, Sectigo. So these are going to be direct integrations that is available out of the box. So for example, if you wish to integrate Key Manager Plus with Global Sign, you do this integration using the account information that you already have with Global Sign, like username and password. Similarly, if you're going to integrate Key Manager Plus with any third-party certificate authority that is supported, based on the certificate authority, you either use the credentials or the API key that you create at the GoDaddy's, at the certificate authorities websites like GoDaddy or DigiCert. So after successful integration, Key Manager Plus is going to synchronize a few data, like for example, the organizations, profiles, domains that you already own with that certificate authority. And once done, you have an import option for each certificate authority integration. So if you go to Global Sign, click more, you have an option called import existing orders. So if you click import existing orders and then click the import button, Key Manager Plus is going to make an API call directly to Global Sign using your account, and it's going to import both orders and their corresponding certificates into its repository. So as you see, you have the list of orders under the Global Sign, where you can see the common name, product name, order number, the order status, and the certificates corresponding to these orders will be imported under the SSL tab. So this is the actual inventory where you'll be able to view some detailed information about the certificates. So similarly, this operation can be performed for any third-party certificate authority that we currently integrate with. In addition to this, when it comes to cloud environments, currently Key Manager Plus integrates with AWS and Azure. So for AWS, this integration is with the AWS Certificate Manager, and we have an AWS discovery that allows you to add and manage AWS credentials prior to the discovery. And once done, you can select the AWS credential based on which this discovery can be performed. And you can choose between two types of discovery. So you can go for the AWS certificate manager based discovery that will be based on specific regions, or you can also discover user certificates from identity and access management. In addition to this, if you take a look at the Azure discovery, then the Azure discovery is based on the key vaults that is synchronized based on the credentials that you add. So if you go back to integrations Azure and click the manage button, you can add the credentials for this type of discovery based on an app registration. And once done, you synchronize the existing key vaults into Key Manager Plus. And based on these key vaults, you can either discover the existing certificates from the certificates section, or in addition to this, you also have the Azure secrets discovery. So currently Key Manager Plus supports discovering the TLS secrets from the secrets section. And when it comes to DevOps, Key Manager Plus directly integrates with Kubernetes, and this integration allows you to fetch TLS secrets that are stored in the Kubernetes containers. And apart from fetching them, you also have options to update the existing TLS secret directly in the Kubernetes container. Similar to this, you can also use the Jenkins integration to automatically create CSRs or uh, fetch certificates during a freestyle job. Okay. Now, so this is going to be the first type of discovery. So once this is done, then you can use the regular discovery scan supported by Key Manager Plus to discover the certificates across the network. So you might come up with a question like, the same certificates are going to be discovered. Yes, the same certificates will be discovered. However, we are not going to duplicate the certificate based on the type of discovery. So we are just going to, Key Manager Plus will ensure that the certificate is detected based on the serial number. And let's say if the same certificate is discovered from the endpoint, we will give you a description that the certificate is already available. However, the IP address or the DNS name of the endpoint from where the certificate has been discovered will be automatically updated to the certificate. So this gives you uh, a clear information on the certificate and where the certificate is hosted in your environment. So in that case, if you take a look at this SSL discovery scan, the SSL discovery scan acts as a network scan that allows you to discover any certificates regardless of the issuer from any endpoint, again regardless of the endpoint, because this discovery scan will make a copy of the certificate during the SSL or TLS handshake. So for example, if you'd like to discover certificates from a single server, you just provide the host name or the IP address or the DNS name of the server from where you'd like to discover the certificates. And by default, we use port 443 for this discovery. In case if you wish to discover certificates from multiple port numbers, you can add them in comma separated values and click the discover button. Similarly, let's say if you'd like to do a complete network scan, you can either go for an IP address range option, or you can discover certificates based on subnets, or you can even upload a file that contains the list of IP addresses, host names, website names, FQDNs, etc. Okay. So when initiating this discovery, Key Manager Plus is going to perform an X509 lookup. So any certificate hosted on the port number that you have specified will be made a copy of in the Key Manager Plus database. So the remaining are just different types of scans that allows you to discover certificates from different areas across your network. So you can discover certificates from mail servers present in your network or from SSH-based load balancers like Nginx, BigIP, F5, Citrix, FortiGate, Firewall. And this load balancer discovery is tunneled via SSH on port 22. So using SCP, we can make a copy of the certificate files from the key stored location of the load balancer into the Key Manager Plus database. And similarly, let's say if you're managing certificates currently as a bulk, and if you'd like to bulk import these certificates into the repository, you can go with a shared path discovery where you can choose between the type of operating system, if it is Windows, Linux, or Mac OS, provide the absolute path from where the certificates are to be discovered, and click the Discover button. In addition to this, we also support the Microsoft Certificate Store Discovery, and this allows you to directly discover and import certificates from the Microsoft Management Console. So let's say, for example, if you have certificates that are used by the Exchange services, or you have RDP certificates. So these type of certificates can be directly discovered from those specific servers. And for bulk discovery, you can either go for an IP address range option by providing the store name, and or by uploading a file that contains the list of servers. So any discovery scan that you perform under the discovery tab is an on-demand process. You're doing it manually. As a best practice, you can automate these scans through scheduled task. So to do that, you can go to schedule, click the add schedule button, select the schedule type as SSL discovery, and you can choose discovery by IP range, subnet from a file load balancer, or shared path. So based on the recurrence type that you're going to choose, either daily, weekly, or monthly, the tool is going to automatically run these scans, and it will also notify you through an email upon successful discovery. So any certificate that you discover either on demand or periodically through scheduled tasks will be imported under the SSL tab. So this is the actual inventory where you'll be able to view some detailed information about the certificates. And the valid due date that you see here is color coded. So for easy access, as soon as you log in and go to the SSL tab, if a certificate is nearing expiry or if a certificate is already expired, you'll be able to notify it from the color coded options available here. Now, once the certificates are discovered and imported into the repository, Key Manager Plus also allows you to consolidate the list of certificates that you wish to manage. So you can choose to delete and exclude certificates that you don't want to manage. So in that case, let's say I don't want to manage these certificates that are already expired, or the certificates that are uh, or certificates that don't require management. In that case, you can just select more, click delete, and you can enable the checkbox to add selected certificates to excluded list. Click the OK button. So these two certificates will be deleted and added to the excluded list. So you can access this excluded list under settings SSL excluded certificates, where we keep a track of the serial number. So these certificates will not be re-added into the repository during the next discovery scan. Now, once done, there are two other options that needs to be performed as mandatory steps, right? So once you have created the inventory, the next step is to configure notification alerts. So you can have different notification policies at different levels. So different people's or department gets notified. To do that, if you go to settings, notification expiry, you can enable notify about SSL certificates expiring within, and mention the number of days before which you should start receiving notifications. So this option is customizable. So once done, you can set the recurrence time. So let's say every day at 9 a.m. I want the scan to run. So every day at 9 a.m. the scan runs, and Key Manager Plus is going to go look for certificates about to expire within 90 days. That is 1 to 89. If yes, an email notification will be triggered to the email addresses that you configure here in this to address field in comma separated values. Now, in addition to this, you can also customize the notification email frequency as required. And this notification policy that you configure under settings is a global policy applicable to the email addresses configured here under settings, and to the email addresses that can be configured per certificate. So you can just select a certificate, click on more, edit, and you can update the expiry notification email for a given certificate so that the certificate owner is notified. In addition to this, you can also create certificate groups. So this can either be a static group, or you can create a dynamic group based on a criteria. So and update the group email so that the department who owns the list of certificates will be notified uh, on its expiry. Now, let's say if you'd like to have a different notification policy altogether. So let's say I want one for 90 days, 60 days, 30 days. So in that case, you can, excuse me, you can go create a scheduled task. Here, you can go choose the schedule type as SSL expiry, where it allows you to select the list of certificates, or you can select a group of certificate, and then you can specify the number of days. So let's say 45 days. Based on the recurrence type that you're going to choose, either daily, weekly, or monthly, again, the Key Manager Plus is going to run this scan, and it will notify you on certificates that are expiring within 45 days. So you can create as many schedules based on your requirement. Now, once done, then you can also configure SSL vulnerability scans in Key Manager Plus. So Key Manager Plus will also run SSL vulnerability scans, and it's going to flag certificates that are prone to vulnerabilities. So let's say it's going to check the revocation status of the certificate. It will check whether the certificate managed in Key Manager Plus and the certificate managed or deployed at the server are the same. In addition to that, it also checks for known end server vulnerabilities like Heartbleed, Poodle, weak ciphers, etc. So in that case, you can configure the SSL vulnerability under settings SSL. So you can enable the schedule task and choose between the recurrence type for daily or weekly. So this is going to be the basic functionality of the product, right? You discover certificates, create the inventory, you configure notification alerts, vulnerability scans, and this specific process is going to help you during the transition period. So inventory, monitoring, and alerts. Now the next step when it comes to certificate management is to renew the certificates and deploy certificates to target machines. Now, when it comes to certificate renewal in Key Manager Plus, there are two processes that is involved. The first process is to renew the certificate from the certificate authority. So meaning that Key Manager Plus is going to send the renewal request to the certificate authority, get the certificate renewed, automatically download the newly renewed certificate. And this newly renewed certificate comes with a new serial number and a new validity. The second process is to deploy this renewed certificate to a target machine where the certificate will be consumed. Now, when it comes to certificate renewal, it depends upon the certificate authority. So in that case, so let's say if you have already integrated with the third-party certificate authority from whom you procure certificates in this, which is already in this supported list. So let's say, for example, Global Sign. As I mentioned, the first step of integration is you integrate and fetch the existing orders and certificates. Now, once done, you have the list of orders. And let's say if a certificate is up for renewal, just go select the certificate order of which of the certificate that needs to be renewed, and then click the renew certificate button. So this renew certificate button is going to give you a renewal form with the data populated from the previous order. So you can just verify these details and click the create button. So Key Manager Place is going to forward this request to Global Sign through API. And once Global Sign validates and issues the new certificate, Key Manager Place is going to automatically download the newly issued certificate into its repository. So this specific process that I've just showcased is for manual renewal. So you get notification alert that the certificate is about to expire. You log into Key Manager, select the order, and click the renew button. Now, in addition to this, you can also configure automatic renewals. In that case, if you go to the Manage tab, you have the auto renewal option here. If you enable it, it will provide you with the list of orders for which the auto renewal is supported. So if yes, you can just select the order, set the days to expire. So let's say I want the certificate to be renewed 30 days prior to its expiry. So you can just configure 30 days. Uh, uh, Specify the algorithm, key store, signature algorithm, validity as per requirement, and click save. So with this configured, when the certificate is nearing 30 days, Key Manager Plus is going to automatically renew the certificate, and it will update you on successful renewal. Apart from renewing certificates with the third party certificate authority integration, let's say if you want to order a new certificate, you can very well click the order certificate button. So it gives you the order form. You fill in the form and complete this order by clicking the create button. So Key Manager Plus will initiate the process by forwarding this request to Global Sign. And again, the newly issued certificate gets automatically imported. Now, the advantage of ordering, renewing, or even reissuing and revoking certificates from Key Manager Place is that all certificate related files are stored in a centralized location. So if you're going to order a certificate, you need a certificate signing request. So you create a certificate signing request from Key Manager Place. Now, when the certificate signing request is created, you have the certificate signing request, the key store, and the private key on a centralized platform. And when the certificate is renewed and imported into the repository, or if the certificate is created and imported into the repository, the created certificate or the renewed certificate is available as a bundle. So it contains the public key, the private key, and the complete chain ready to be exported or ready to be deployed from Key Manager Plus based on the different types of deployments. So this is how or this is exactly the same process in certificate management with all third-party certificate authorities supported by Key Manager Plus. In addition to this, you also have the integrations with Acme vendors. So let's say if you take Let's Encrypt as an example, you can create certificate request using this Let's Encrypt integration. So you can choose between two types of challenges. It can be an HTTP or a DNS challenge. So once created, you can once created, it goes to a pending state, right? So you click the pending button and you can configure automatic deployment. It can be a Windows deployment using an agent, or it can be a Linux deployment tunnel via SSH. So once configured, Key Manager Plus is designed to automatically renew these certificates 15 days prior to its expiry, which is on the 75th day. So currently, Let's Encrypt provides certificates that are valid for 90 days. So Key Manager Plus is designed to auto renew them 15 days prior to its expiry. So upon auto renewal, if you have configured the automatic deployment, Key Manager Plus is going to automatically deploy the certificate based on the deployment that you have configured. Okay. Now, apart from this, we also support a bunch of other deployments in Key Manager Plus. So to deploy certificates, you can just select the certificates checkbox, click the deploy button, and these deployments can also be pre-configured to be in an automated fashion. So for example, if I would like to perform uh, a Windows-based deployment, I can either go for a file transfer or a certificate store deployment or IIS binding. For Linux, again, I can deploy and push certificates to the key store location. We also support direct deployments to manage engines, mobile devices, as well as for AWS Certificate Manager based on specific regions. And for load balancers, currently we support end-to-end deployment for Citrix ADC and FortiGate firewall. So all these deployments can be pre-configured, and when you edit a certificate, you have a checkbox stating that deploy certificates on auto renewal. So, so deploy certificate on auto renewal is currently supported for all internally signed as well as for third-party certificate authority sign, especially for IIS binding. Now, other automatic deployment based on these deployment types is in the final stages of development, and you can expect this to be released before the end of June 2025. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the certificate management, right? Now, apart from this, when it comes to auditing and compliance, so Key Manager Plus has an efficient auditing mechanism that tracks every operation performed in the tool. So with the latest versions of Key Manager Plus, you can see that the audit has been categorized as operation discovery and scheduled audit for easy access. You can also receive alerts based on these operations under settings notification audit, and these alerts can be received through email, SNMP, trap, or syslog messages. And you also have instant reports for all certificate management operations that you perform. So if you go to the reports tab, we have an overall SSL certificates report. We have wildcard reports, a deploy service report. So all these reports can be downloaded on demand, or you can automate or create scheduled tasks to receive these reports automatically from Key Manager Plus. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So let's quickly go back to the presentation where we can quickly discuss on the roadmap that we currently work on towards the zero touch automation. So we are expanding support for automated certificate deployment across a wide range of certificate authorities, both public and private. So we are doing a complete development, I'm sorry, deployment revamp. So this reduces the manual work that you need to do after a certificate is issued. And when it comes to post deployment automation, so we are adding more flexibility in what happens after a certificate is deployed. So think of automated service restarts, custom scripts, webhooks, and integration with infrastructure tools. And finally, a key item on our roadmap is a fully managed PKI as a SaaS solution. So this will allow you to create, issue, and manage certificates without the need for local infrastructure. So yes. So with that said, we have completed, or we are going to wrap up this 47-day mandate, and the next slide is all about Q&A. So we have this Q&A panel where you can drop your questions, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Arul, for that wonderful overview of Key Manager Plus. Folks, you can use the Q&A panel to post your questions. We'll be happy to take your questions. If you would like to connect with us after this session, you can also do so. You can write to us using the email address that you see on your. You can write to keymanagerplus-support@manageengine.com. But if you have any questions right now, you can use the Q&A panel. Be happy to answer them. And also, once you're done with the session, when you end this session, you will be redirected to a feedback form. So we'll be happy to get your feedback as well. If you'd like to connect with one of our experts, if you would want to individually reach out to us, and if you would like our experts to help you out with this whole transition, we would be happy to help you with that. You can use the feedback form to drop that particular note as well.